Hi there. This is the other video that I wanted to do is a quick rundown of the practical exam. Now, there are some hints and tips that I can provide you that will help you get through the practical exam and help you succeed. And this applies to both the non-restricted and the restricted practical exam. Before the exam, you have to know, I'm going to try not to read it right off the paper here, but these are notes that I wanted to cover in this video. Before the exam, make sure you've had an opportunity to handle all of the firearms. Each instructor shows up generally with a kit of firearms or multiple kits of firearms. If you are told by the instructor that you're going to learn on this kit and you're going to be tested on this kit, then that's great. Learn those firearms. But if he says you're going to be learning and tested on any of the kits and you don't know which one you're going to be tested on, make sure you know every single firearm in every single kit that's in that facility. Some of these firearms are old. Some of them don't function properly. Some of them have been deactivated in a fairly unfortunate way, like they'll have a rod shoved through the barrel, which makes it very difficult to do proving rod test, that kind of thing. So you have to do what you can with it, but make sure you know those firearms as well as you can. Know which firearms have safeties and which ones don't, and how to use the safeties. Know where and how to read the data stamp on the firearm. When you get an opportunity to work at the tables, look for the data stamp on the firearm. Don't memorize them. If you get asked, what's the data stamp on this firearm, you have to be able to read it right to the instructor. He's going to expect that. From the written exam, of course, make sure you know your types of actions, how to identify ammunition, know your regulations. Know how to apply trigger and safety cable locks. When you go to do the exam, the instructor is going to have a test sheet for you, which he's going to write down everything. He is to write down the results of everything he asks you, whether you got it right or got it wrong. So don't get weirded out if you see him there with a pen and paper writing a whole pile of stuff down. It doesn't mean you're doing bad. If the instructor's giving the test and you're doing things and suddenly there's a pause, like let's say he asks you to do something, you do it, and he's just staring at you blankly, he hasn't gone to sleep. It means he's given you a second because you might have missed something. We call it the pause, or the awkward silence, where you're looking at him, he's looking at you, and what you're supposed to do at that point is you're supposed to say, okay, let's go through this in my head. Let's figure out if I've missed a step. And that happens from time to time because you've had very little time to work with these firearms before being pressed into the exam. So, stop, take a second, mentally go through everything in your head, and carry on. Let's see. Oh, you are not expected to be experts in these firearms. In fact, if you go to buy your first firearm, or any number of firearms, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to buy the ones that you used on the test. So we don't expect you to know how to do everything on a firearm, but we do expect you to know what you're supposed to do. So, for example, if you load a firearm, you're supposed to put the safety on. You have to know how to eject a magazine from it. In the test, feel free to ask questions of the examiner if you can't find something, or if you don't know how to do something, but you know you're supposed to do it on the test. You'll get full marks for that. I'm never going to take marks off of somebody because they couldn't find the mag release. If they say, I'm looking for the mag release on this firearm, can you show me where it is? Then I know, you know to take that mag out. Removing that source of ammunition, remember? So, if you know what to do, we'll help you with the how. Now, what can fail you? We have an extremely high success rate in the practical tests, but it is a very nervous experience for a lot of students. And sometimes, because of the nerves, they make mistakes. Two things that do tend to unfortunately cause some failures with students. The first one is muzzle direction. You're going to be given a safe direction between this piece of tape and this piece of tape, and between the table and this piece of tape, or something like that. You'll be given a safe downrange direction. You've got to keep the muzzle pointed in that direction. Every time the muzzle drifts outside, left, right, up, or down, you're going to lose points. If you point the firearm at anybody, you will be automatically failed. If you point the firearm at yourself to do a visual bore inspection, you have to tell the instructor that you're going to do a visual bore inspection before you do. Otherwise, again, you're going to get failed. The other thing that will fail people is multiple repetitions of putting the trigger finger on the trigger or inside the trigger guard. This is something that if you don't have a lot of experience with firearms, you're actually going to have an advantage. It's the guys, the people who have learned to shoot from their father or from an older brother or friends or whatever, or learned to shoot by themselves. They're the ones that have picked up bad habits or have had bad habits transferred to them. Immediately, starting today, as soon as you see this video, get in the habit of taking that trigger finger and running it along the side of the action of the firearm. Not inside the trigger guard, not under the trigger guard, not across the trigger guard, definitely away from the trigger. Keep your booger picker off the bang switch, they say. You will lose marks every time your finger drifts in there. And if the instructor can't see that your finger is outside that trigger guard, he can't give you credit for keeping it out there. Let me see, what else have we got here? Other than that, the test is designed that you can make a mistake or two and still succeed. You can pick up the wrong firearm accidentally. Complete all of the other tasks. You'll lose a couple marks for picking up the wrong firearm, but you'll salvage all of the other points because you did everything else correctly. Don't pick up the wrong firearm, though. It's a bad way to throw points away. A couple other items on the test that you don't want to bite you. Oh, for example, if you've been taught to do the axe and prove every time you pick up a firearm, when you get to the test, if you do not do an axe and prove when you're supposed to, not only do you not get the point for doing the axe and prove, but there's also a penalty that gets applied for not doing an axe and prove when you're supposed to. So you can lose 3 points just for not doing an axe and prove when you're supposed to. When in doubt, do your axe and prove. Check out my other videos. It'll make you sick of axe and prove. But it's the way to do it. If you do not really have a good grasp on the axe and prove acronym, feel free to say them out loud. There's nothing that says you have to be completely silent through the entire exam. I've got some students that will actually talk me through everything they're doing as if they're explaining it to me. It helps keep all of their thoughts straight and helps them succeed by not forgetting anything. I'm a pilot. I've been flying for years. We still run through the checklists out loud, even when there's nobody else in the plane. I don't mutter it, I just say it out loud. So you get the point. Make sure that you talk stuff through. If you're nervous, talk your way through the entire test. You won't get penalized for it. If the instructor doesn't, I've mentioned it before, if he doesn't see something, he can't give you credit for it. So if you're able to, let's say you're doing an axe and prove, if you're deliberately doing each step, or at least you're reading out each step as you're doing it, then he knows that you know what you're doing. He gives you the credit for it. If you're flipping your hands around so fast that he doesn't know if you actually checked to do the feed path or something like that, you can't get the point for the axe and prove. So the things that'll fail you, again, just in summary, is muzzle direction and trigger. Keep those two together and keep them, make sure you keep a grip on them and you'll be okay. The rest of it, relax if you can. Talk to the instructor. If you're nervous, tell him you're nervous. He has tools that he can use to help lighten you up a little bit. He can tell you a joke, or if you're, I've had students that have come in and they're actually shaking. They're so nervous. I stop the test for a minute. We go have a chat for a couple of minutes. Then we come back to it. The name of the game with these tests, both the written and the practical, is we need to know that you know the material. This isn't a test on, how do you get the material out of the student. If you know the answer, and we can find out that you know the answer, then you get credit for it. If you get really, really weirded out, if we can't control that, then we can't tell that you know the material. So we're going to do the best we can to try to help you out with that. Good luck on your tests.